Hi, I'm Marin. Welcome back to my channel, Marin Makes It. In today's video, I want to talk about trusted house sitters. I've made several videos on this site already. I'll link those down below, but today I wanted to address a topic that I haven't really talked about yet in any of these videos, and that is the premium membership and Trusted House Sitters sit cancellation insurance. I've been on this site now for multiple years, so I have some experience with these things, and I'm going to answer all your burning questions today. Is the premium membership actually worth it? What are the perks that you get with it? How much more does it actually cost you? And what is the sit cancellation policy? So just as a quick refresh, what is Trusted House Sitters? Trusted House Sitters is basically a platform, which is a site, a website, and also an app that allows house sitters to find house owners looking for house sitters and vice versa. So you can search as a house sitter for house sits, and the homeowners can search for house sitters. The thing that makes Trusted House Sitters a little bit different than sites like Rover or Wag or one of those other dog sitting sites is that on Trusted House Sitters, no money is exchanged between the parties. The premise or the slogan of the company is make memories, not money. So whatever you think of that is fine. Let me know in the comments down below. I definitely am interested to hear your thoughts. I definitely have a lot of thoughts on this topic, and it's something I've thought about making a whole dedicated video on, but I just want you to understand for the sake of this video that that is the premise of the site. Actually, both parties pay money to be on the platform, and then you exchange your house sitting service for basically a free place to stay, and the homeowners have to allow you to stay in your house. Whereas sites like Rover, you might not necessarily be guaranteed housing or a place to stay just because you take on a pet sitting job through that site. Although I know in some cases the pet sitter or the pet owners do actually want you to stay in their home on sites like that. But on Trusted House Sitters, the premise is that you will have a place to stay while you're doing that house sit. So it's a way to get to travel and experience some different places while having accommodations, where instead of paying for accommodations, you're exchanging your time house sitting, pet sitting for those accommodations. So both the homeowners and the pet sitters have to pay a membership to sign up for the site. It's a 1-year membership. So the pet sitters have 3 options when they sign up for membership. So there's a basic, a standard, and a premium. So it's kind of the basic, the standard, and the premium. So each one adds a few more perks, and of course you pay a little bit more for each one per year. So it's a yearly membership. So your membership is good for 1 whole year. I'm also going to link below a discount code if you want to sign up. I do have a code for 25% off if you do want to sign up for Trusted House Sitters. That will reduce the prices of the memberships obviously even more. This link is also something that will work for pet sitters or pet parents, or you can get a combined membership in which you get both. So as you can see, the premium membership is about $90 a year more than the standard membership. So what are you getting for those $90 more, and is it worth it? So the things you get extra, as you can kind of see when you compare these lists of benefits here, is that you're getting free airport lounge passes. So you get 2 of those per year if you'd like to take advantage of that. You get the sit cancellation plan, and you also get a premium badge next to your profile name. So we're going to talk about each of those separately to talk about which of those are worth it and what kind of the value of each of those things is, in my opinion, as somebody that's been on the site for several years. So let's go through each of these additional perks of the premium membership now. So the airport lounge passes are basically complimentary passes, complimentary of Trusted House Sitters. They will provide those to you given that you give them the following information. So you have to give them some information up front, 72 hours in advance, so they can book these passes for you. Once they book the passes, then when you get to go to the airport, you get to go in the nice fancy lounge in the airport that you have the tickets now booked for. You get one for yourself and one extra one for a friend. It sounds like you can't split these up, so you have to use both of them at once, and you get 2 of these passes per year. So basically 1 time in the year, you can take advantage of this deal. I did a little bit of digging for you guys to see what exactly these lounges were like and what exactly these lounge passes could be used for. So apparently Trusted House Sitters is partnered with loungepass.com, and that site allows you to book some different lounges around the world. There are 600 different lounges that are partnered with them at 350 different airports worldwide. So then I kind of fell down the internet research rabbit hole of looking at these different lounges, and I wanted to see if I could figure out what the approximate dollar value would be for each of these passes. So of course it's going to depend on the airport and the specific lounge. The cheapest lounge I could find in this whole long list of lounges, which I spent way more time scrolling through than I want to admit, was $22, and that was for the lounge in the Montpellier Mediterranee. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher that airport in France, but that was only a $22 ticket to get into the lounge. Of course, if you want to pay for drinks and food and stuff, that's probably going to be extra in all of these lounges, but your entrance ticket just to get into the lounge is what's being paid for here. Among the more expensive ones, for example, I found $50 tickets to the DFW, which is the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport Plaza Premium Lounge, which was a $50 ticket. So getting two of those would give you about $100 value right there. Something else interesting about these lounge passes is actually that you don't have to use them while you're traveling to a house sit. So you can actually use them any point in the calendar year as long as you have an active premium membership on Trusted House Sitters, which is something that I had kind of forgotten about, honestly, until I was researching this video. I usually end up driving to all my house sits because I want my car there, and I mostly house sit in the Colorado area when I do, because that is where a lot of my in-person stuff is based out of at this point in time. So I need my car around, and I'm not really flying to house sits very often. But I realized that I do fly, and I actually could use these tickets for the lounge for a different flight going somewhere else. It doesn't have to be in conjunction with an actual house sit, which is something kind of interesting about them. So basically, as long as you're planning to fly in the next 365 days, you can probably find a way to at least use these premium lounge passes from your premium Trusted House Sitters membership. If you're still here watching now at this point in the video, please give this video a thumbs up. Please hit the subscribe button. It really does help YouTube to know to recommend this video to other people who might be interested in this topic, and it really would mean the world to me. So now let's quickly touch on that second perk with the premium membership, which is the premium badge on your profile on Trusted House Sitters. So basically this means you get a little crown thing and a thing that says premium membership on your profile, which means that pet owners and house owners can see on your profile that you paid for the most expensive membership. Now, do I think that that actually helps you get a house sit? I would say sometimes, because I think there is something psychological that if somebody sees that you paid for the most expensive membership, that means you're willing to invest in making your profile good, and you're probably a more serious house sitter on the site than somebody who's just paying for the most basic membership. I feel like people take you more seriously when they see that you invested that money up front. Additionally, I have used it as a selling point with people when they're interviewing me, because I remind them that that premium membership means that I have access to the 24/7 vet support line from Trusted House Sitters. It means I have the liability insurance. So if their pet were to injure somebody while I was on the house sit, there would be insurance for that situation happening. Those are things you already get with the standard membership. I also tell them that if they, for some reason, have to cancel their plans, I'm going to have that sit cancellation plan in place because I'm a premium house sitter. And that's going to mean that they have peace of mind and they don't have the guilt if for some reason their travel plans do change at the last minute. And so I think I have been able to successfully use that as a selling point to sort of seal the deal when somebody has had a lot of different applicants that they're reviewing for a house sit, or when maybe I wasn't the first applicant, but they're willing to talk to all the different applicants. I think that has, in a few situations, helped me seal the deal and actually secure that house sit as mine. But I do not think in any means that this premium badge being on your profile is the most important thing to securing a house sit. There are much more important things to have on your profile or to not have on your profile for securing a house sit successfully. And if you're interested in making a really strong profile on Trusted House Sitters, I've actually made a whole video dedicated to this already, how you can set up your profile so that people will actually view you and you'll actually secure the sit. Because if you're signing up for this site and you're willing to pay that sign up fee, you want to actually get house sits. You don't want to be sitting there with your profile being looked at but not actually being able to seal the deal. So that's why I made this whole dedicated video already, and I'll make sure to link that in the description down below and at the end of the video. So now this brings us to the third big difference between the premium plan and the standard plan, and that is the sit cancellation plan that Trusted House Sitters offer. I believe they used to call this sit cancellation insurance, but I see now researching this video that it actually says sit cancellation plan and not insurance on the site. So I'm not exactly sure what the change, why that change in wording would have come about. If anybody has any thoughts about that, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm definitely curious. I also don't know what officially something has to be in order to be able to be called insurance. I don't know if there's certain requirements you have to meet or certain regulations around using the word insurance that maybe they weren't fully meeting, and so they changed the wording to call it the sit cancellation plan instead of the sit cancellation insurance. But regardless, if I accidentally call it insurance while I'm talking in this section, that's why. It's because that's what I refer to it as in my head, and I believe that's what it was previously called. So sit cancellation plan, sit cancellation insurance, I'm going to use those two terms interchangeably, but officially on their site, this membership perk is called the sit cancellation plan. So basically the sit cancellation plan ensures you that you will end up with a place to stay if your worst case scenario happens and your house sit gets canceled, you've already traveled to the place, you're now homeless in a strange city that you don't know well. So let's now go through some of the nitty-gritty of this plan, how it actually works, how you actually get compensated, and then I'll tell you guys my own personal story about my experience with this insurance plan. And you'll find out how well it did or didn't work for me when things got a little weird during one of my house sits. So what does this sit cancellation plan actually give you? So they give you up to $1,500 per calendar year, up to $150 a night. So you cannot spend more than $150 a night, or if you do, you will have to pay the difference. They will only cover you up to $150 a night. And there's a maximum number of nights per year that they'll cover you, which is 30 nights. So if you had multiple house sits canceled on you in a year and that adds up to more than 30 nights, unfortunately, you're going to be out of luck. And if your accommodations add up to more than that $1,500 in a calendar year, you're also going to be out of luck. So it resets every year when you pay for your new membership, because your membership is yearly. But in one calendar year, it's $1,500 for the maximum total amount, $150 for the total amount per night, and 30 nights for the maximum total of nights. And this is all in US dollars, but these numbers are all translated over into the equivalent amounts in a different currency. So whatever $150 US is in whatever currency, in whatever country you're staying, if you're staying somewhere international, it will get translated over. But now let's talk about which scenarios actually qualify you to use and take advantage of this sit cancellation plan. So the first criteria is you have to have an active premium membership. That's kind of a no-brainer. That's what this whole video is about. The next criteria is that your sit must be canceled unexpectedly and by the pet parent. So the sit cannot be canceled by you, and it cannot be a mutual thing. So if you are talking to the pet parent and you both decide that the sit's going to be canceled and you agree to those conditions, then your insurance is not going to cover you. So this has to be a scenario where the pet parent cancels on you without talking to you first, without you agreeing to cancel the sit. It cannot be a mutual situation, and it cannot be you withdrawing from the house sit situation, which makes a lot of sense, kind of obvious, but these are the official criteria. The next part of that condition is that the cancellation was unexpected. And an unexpected cancellation by Trusted House Sitters is defined as within 14 days of the sit starting or less, or while the sit is actually ongoing until the end date of the sit. So 14 days before or during the sit before the agreed upon end date. That is what is considered an unexpected cancellation by your pet parent. When this cancellation on you first occurs, you have 24 hours to contact Trusted House Sitters to let them know about the situation. And the first thing they're going to try to do is to find you a suitable alternative house sit to do. So they're going to try to find you something that covers those dates, that's still available in terms of house sits in the area where you're going to. I'm not sure exactly what radius they're willing to look in, but they're going to try to find you a reasonable alternative house sit to take on. Now, of course, if this is such a short-term cancellation on you, it is very possible that they're not going to find you anything, because if somebody cancels a day before, who is still looking for a house sitter on Trusted House Sitters a day before they leave on vacation? Like at that point, they've made alternative arrangements for their pet if they weren't able to secure something on Trusted House Sitters. Usually people are posting their house sits on Trusted House Sitters with a couple weeks lead time so that they can get the house sitter sorted out so that they can go on vacation with peace of mind. Usually people are not looking that last minute for a house sitter, but I do think this really depends on the length of your house sit and of course, how close to the actual house sit starting your cancellation occurred on. So now let's say that Trusted House Sitters cannot find you a reasonable alternative house sit on the site, which, like I said, seems like the most likely thing to happen. If anybody's had this sit cancellation experience happen to them and they had to do a different house sit that Trusted House Sitters found for them, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your story and how that all worked out. But in my understanding of the app and my experience of the app, I feel like it would be highly unlikely for this scenario to actually work out, where the dates just happen to line up so well and the location and the timing of the cancellation so that you're actually going to be able to go fulfill that alternative house sit. So let's say they try to find you one, they don't find you one, now what happens? So now you are covered by the insurance for a reasonable alternative accommodation. And what does that mean? That means that you can go to a hotel or an otherwise licensed rental property, something like Airbnb, through a site that is a rental vacation type site would be eligible here, that would be something that they cover. Now, if you decide to go stay with a friend and then try to say, oh, well, you guys owe me for 10 nights, yeah, they're not going to cover that. You have to prove that you spent the money. So you have to send in your receipts for the alternative accommodations that you booked and have to document those expenses to send them into Trusted House Sitters. And then they're going to reimburse you, or the company that insures them that they do their plans through will reimburse you, which makes total sense, because if you just said, oh yeah, it got canceled on me and I went to stay with my friend, then you would basically be making money off the house sit being canceled, because they would be paying you for money you did not spend. So you'd be getting paid to not house sit on those days, which makes no sense. So that's why the policy is that you need to document these expenses, which makes total sense. The other criteria that your alternative accommodations have to meet is that they have to be within 20 miles of where the house sit was, which is 32 kilometers. For those of you in other countries than the US, that's 20 miles or 32 kilometers within where your original house sit was supposed to be. And that too honestly makes total sense to me, because you can't just go dip out and go to a different city than the city you were planning to be in. That would be kind of odd if they let you do that. You have to end up within a reasonable distance to where you are actually supposed to be for them to consider that a reasonable alternative to your original plan. So assuming all these criteria are met, you contact Trusted House Sitters, you tell them the situation that happened, provide all the appropriate documentation, provide all the receipts, and then they will reimburse you, or their insurance company will reimburse you for the money that you spent on your alternative accommodations. So one catch with that is that you actually have to have the money for the alternative accommodations up front, which is something that can be quite expensive. For example, if your house sit got canceled for 10 days and you now have to put yourself in a hotel for 10 days, that could easily be $100 a night in a city especially, but let's just say $100 a night for easy math. $100 times 10 night, that's $1,000. So you have to front the $1,000 and then submit your receipts, and then you'll get the money back. But you still have to pay the $1,000 up front. So you still have to have that money up front in order to be able to take advantage of this policy. So that is something I just wanted to throw in there, because especially if your house sit is now more than 10 days, this can start to get really expensive and you are responsible for paying those things up front. So just something to keep in mind that I did not realize until it was happening to me what the situation was going to be. There are a few other special scenarios where your cancellation might not meet the rules for being reimbursed. For example, if the situation or the cancellation was due to a change in trade law or economic sanctions, basically very abnormal, anomaly type international political situations. There are some like that where they are just covering their butts basically and reserve the right to refuse to reimburse in those situations. The last thing I'll say here about the actual way that the sit cancellation policy works here is that you are responsible for the first $150 of your alternate accommodations. So if you spend $1,000 on alternative accommodations, you're responsible for the first $150. That's your deductible basically. And then after that, they start paying. So if I submit $1,000 of expenses, minus out $150, they'll reimburse me $850. So you still have to cover a little bit of that alternative accommodations yourself, which I do want to mention because I know that while it does feel worth it to have them cover and give you $850 back in this scenario, $150 is still a lot of money, especially if you're somebody who's traveling as a way to save money or house sitting as a way to save money by not paying rent. $150 might be a huge financial strain on you in that moment that you weren't planning to have. So it's definitely something to think about as you're sort of budgeting and dealing with this kind of a lifestyle. Okay, so now for my own personal story with the sit cancellation insurance. So I was in a house sit, it was about 3 weeks long, and about halfway in, I get a text from the homeowner, and it says, I'm gonna be home in 24 hours. I am getting deported from the country I'm in. What? I remember just my heart just like stopped. So of course it was the worst timing possible because I was working in person at the time and I had a really big day that day. I was training the person who was going to replace me actually at my job, and so there was absolutely no option to call out of work or not go that day. I absolutely had to go. And so I realized that would mean that I basically had to pack up all my stuff in the evening that day so that this man would come home in the morning, and then I would be going back to in-person work the next morning, because all of this was happening, of course, on a weekday. I would believe it was a Wednesday. What a nice midweek surprise for me. So what ended up happening, or what was happening, was that this man had gone to Germany and then he was planning to go to Sweden. So halfway through his trip, he was flying from Germany to Sweden. Those were the two places that he was going. He had 2 dogs. So one of the dogs was with me at home, and the other dog, he had gotten permission and paperwork and all these forms done so that he could take his other dog with him on his travels because he did not want to leave her at home. He takes the other dog and he has the right paperwork for Germany, but apparently when he got to the airport in Sweden, or when he was getting on the plane to Sweden, he didn't have the right paperwork anymore suddenly. He was missing something, and they were like, well, you can go to Sweden, but your dog can't. Of course he's gonna stay with his dog. So he got detained in a little room. It looked like a little cell. He sent me pictures of it. He got detained there with his dog until the authorities at the airport could get him on the next flight home to America. He lived in New Mexico, which is where I was staying, so it is quite a lot of flights from Sweden or Germany. I'm not sure if he was detained at the airport in Sweden and didn't get into the country, or if he was detained in Germany before he even got on the plane to Sweden. Looking back, I'm not exactly sure of the details of that, but either way, it's a long way from Germany or Sweden to New Mexico. So they had to do quite a lot of flights with layovers to get him back to New Mexico, and so it took a while for that to get all organized, and in the meantime he just had to wait in this little room and be detained. Of course I felt bad for the guy, but this had also been a very, let's say, high maintenance house sit situation. There was a lot of little things that had been grinding my gears about the whole house sit and about the owner and just how much he was checking in and wanting to FaceTime me to see what was going on at home, to see his other dog. And so I would definitely say that it was not my favorite house sit ever, just because it felt like a little bit of a helicopter parent type situation with the dog that was at home with me. And I just kind of felt like if you can't leave your dogs alone for the 2 weeks that you're going, maybe you shouldn't be traveling internationally. And I don't mean that in a mean way at all. I love dogs. I love pets. I would have a hard time leaving my dogs at home too if I was traveling for a prolonged period internationally. But maybe you should think about that before you decide to go on an international trip, is all I'm trying to say. And maybe you need to get the paperwork so that both your dogs can come with you if it is that big of a thing for you to leave them at home. Anyway, regardless, I don't mean that to be mean. I'm just trying to be honest here about how I felt about the situation. Anyways, the being deported thing was kind of the nail in the coffin. I was irritated. I was stressed with my whole work situation going on. Now I had to pack up all my stuff and find a hotel within a suitable distance to my job, but also to this house sit within that 20-mile radius where they were still willing to reimburse me. Meanwhile, I'm trying to take the steps needed to contact Trusted House Sitters to get the ball rolling to make sure I'm even gonna get this insurance thing in the first place sorted out. So I had, at the point that he was deported coming back early, I had 9 days left of that house sit. And so I had to pay up front for 9 days in a hotel. And I will say it was pretty scary to just be sitting there waiting to hear, am I going to be reimbursed for all of this or not? Because you basically file a claim like you do with any insurance, and then you wait, and then you wait, and you wait, and you wait for them to process that claim. And in the meantime, you're out the $900 or whatever. And nothing like an extra $900 expense and your house sit ending early to cause a lot of extra stress in your life. So it was a little bit stressful. I just had to kind of trust that I had done all the right steps to document the process, and that my situation was such an extreme, strange scenario that happened where there's really no way that they could have said that this situation does not qualify for that insurance plan. I kind of felt like, listen, if this situation doesn't qualify, I don't know what would be a situation that qualifies, because this is such a extreme scenario thing happening to me right now. Anyway, so they did reimburse me minus that deductible amount like I was talking about before. You are responsible for paying that first $150, but the rest of the time they did reimburse me. It took me though 4 weeks to get the money. So I will say that. So in the meantime, I was just out that money waiting to hear what would happen with my claim. As a conclusion to this video on this topic, the Trusted House Sitters sit cancellation insurance definitely does actually work, and it's definitely something worth considering when you're signing up for your membership, especially depending on how much you're planning to use the site. But I think for an extra $90 a year, it was well worth it, because in the end, it ended up saving me hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and I got to stay in a hotel for that time. And that situation, which was stressful at the time, would have been even so much more stressful if I hadn't had that insurance at all. So I do think that the sit cancellation plan alone makes it worth it to sign up for that more premium membership, if that makes sense. Anyways, I would love to hear your stories in the comments down below if you have experience with Trusted House Sitters, and especially with the sit cancellation policy. I will link my other Trusted House Sitters videos in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Bye, YouTube.